You and me were sitting in front of our TVs watching the premiere of All-Stars 2 all the way back in 2016, and to our surprise, RuPaul announces that there will be no eliminations this season. That can't be right, and it wasn't. As it turns out, the queens would be eliminating each other. Well, I'm sure you can all imagine the collective gag that we all gusp. Meanwhile, present day, we just had our first 3 episodes of All-Stars 11. And it got me thinking. All-Stars needs eliminations. The bracket format works, but to an extent. Now, frontrunners are always going to be eliminated on reality TV, but someone like Morgan McMichaels, who won 2 of the first 3 challenges of the season, not making it to the merge, doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem fair, even. And while I love the drama of a good format, sometimes it leaves us with a result like this, where it's just like, damn. Now I know what you're all already thinking. They changed the bracket format so that they could cast more big name queens and so that it would be more beneficial to all the queens cast so that they could show their entire runway packages, and it just is better for everyone all around. They get 3 guaranteed episodes, and while that is all true, and we have seen bigger names return because of this format, I'd argue that it's not as beneficial to these queens as people are making it out to be, and in a lot of ways, for a lot of queens, somebody like Morgan McMichaels or Morphine, it's actually detrimental to their appearances on the season. Now, don't get me wrong, the bracket format is still better than non-elimination seasons, and even, I'd argue, the lip sync assassin format, but we've all been dancing around the same thing. Drag Race needs eliminations. Plain and simple, the entire pacing of the show, the competitive edge, the suspense, it all completely is null and void if there are no eliminations. And Drag Race and reality TV in general was built off of having eliminations. Eliminations have been a staple of reality TV since its very inception. Producers have eliminations so that you will stick around each week to see who gets eliminated. You'll stick around to the very end of the episode to see who gets eliminated. It builds suspense each week as you're waiting to see who gets eliminated week by week. And we're actively watching the thinning of a herd as a reality TV season goes on. And that was always kind of the early appeal of competitive reality TV. Whether it's the social game of a competitive reality TV show like Survivor or Big Brother, or it's the competitive edge of reality shows like American Idol or The X Factor. All of these shows have eliminations. Drag Race came onto the scene in 2009 and completely changed the game and flipped the script on eliminations in reality TV. What Drag Race was able to do was give the queens who are about to be eliminated a fighting chance to see if they could stay in the competition. The Lip Sync for Your Life format was so revolutionary because it gave contestants a last chance to fight for themselves rather than just having their track record for the competition or what they did in that episode completely judge who was eliminated. On other talent-based competitive reality shows, the person who did the worst that week almost always goes home, and that's why shows like American Idol or The X Factor, they get stale after the first couple of seasons because it's kind of the same thing over and over again. And what the Lip Sync for Your Life format did was make the episodes unpredictable, and it gives variation to each season because each lip sync, each cast of queens is never the same. And that's one of the reasons why Drag Race is still on air to this day and still going strong. The Lip Sync for Your Life format was also so beneficial because it made more queens likable. Think about if queens like Jorgeous or Morphine didn't have the Lip Sync for Your Life format. They would be relegated to being early outs, and we probably wouldn't think about them as much as we do. It gives these queens who maybe don't excel in the challenges a chance to still show what they're great at. And as we saw with Morphine on All-Stars 11, she didn't get to lip sync once that whole season because she was never in the top. And so we don't get to see any of what we truly love Morphine for. So I hope I've kind of proved to you why eliminations are so important in reality TV, which brings us to All-Stars. And All-Stars is kind of a different case because All-Stars brings in that social strategy that shows like Survivor and Big Brother have, and it mixes it in with the Drag Race format. But regardless, All-Stars is no exception when it comes to the simple fact that Drag Race needs eliminations. I talk about this in my All-Stars 11 premiere video, but the constant shifting of formats on All-Stars has left the show feeling inconsistent, insecure, and self-conscious. On one hand, I'm happy that they listen to audience feedback, and when they find out that we're not enjoying a format, they do try to change things up. But it gets to a point where you're just not confident in what you're selling, and you had something great with the top 2 lip sync for your legacy format, and you had to change it up because it comes down to two main things that are the reason that the format keeps on changing on All Stars: control and casting. Production wants control and production wants good casting. The reason mainline Drag Race got so popular, like I said, was because the lip sync for your life format gave it such an unpredictable nature. You never knew who was going to go home that week. Would it be the queen who did the worst in the challenge? Or would the frontrunner go home because they can't lip sync for shit? I'm sorry, Jane, don't. She's not that bad. And All Stars was still delivering on this great promise of unpredictability with the top two lip sync for your legacy format. We had somebody like Ben de la Creme, who was in the top consistently, eliminate herself because she just couldn't handle the toll that eliminating other queens was doing to her. Or you had Manila Luzon's elimination that was truly a gag to everybody as she was the frontrunner. And her elimination was really the straw that broke the camel's back because I think that she was production's pick to win. And when she was eliminated, all hell broke loose. And production realized that they had lost control of the game in a really major way. And at that point, they pivoted and they went to the lip sync assassin format and so on and so forth. They did non-elimination, all this stuff because they needed control of what happened in the season. Otherwise, they lose control of the narrative and the fans start to get upset when the frontrunners aren't making it to the finale. When you have a frontrunner eliminated midway through the season, you have time to recoup and build new frontrunners. But when a frontrunner is eliminated so close to the finale, you don't have as much time to recoup. And so with things like Manila or things like Jane Don't, that's a real problem for production. It also creates a problem for production in the casting realm. When the queens see that they could be eliminated at any moment and they don't get to show their entire package, queens who are big names and who are doing well for themselves are like, there's no reason for me to return to All Stars. I am getting consistently booked. I've got the money. I'm still relevant. I don't need to come back. And so that's why we've seen the All Stars casts getting consistently less and less star-packed. And while I love to see early outs come back, I think we've seen just an overabundance of early outs coming back, and it's made the cast feel less interesting, and it's made the competition less interesting because we're looking at Mystique and Lucky Stars in bracket number 1 for All Stars 11, and at no point did I think they stood any chance of making it to the merge. And so that left us with 4 queens who it was really in contention for. And so we're at present day with the All Stars 11 bracket format, and yes, it does give the queens a chance to show off everything they brought, and it gives them a guaranteed 3 episodes, which is great for these early outs who come back and maybe don't have it in them to go all the way and might end up being a first or second out. And so for someone like Lucky Stars or Mystique Summers, this season was a great opportunity for them because they probably would have been the first out or the second out if we're being for real. And them having a guaranteed 3 episodes is amazing. But for someone like Morgan McMichaels, who won the first 2 out of the 3 challenges, this format is terrible for her. She wins 2 out of 3 challenges and is eliminated when she would have been the front runner. And if this was a normal season, she would still be there. Her, Akeria, and Dawn would still be there. And now, obviously, when you incorporate everybody else in the cast, it's hard to say if they would still be in the top for all of these challenges, but the principle still stands. And even for someone like Dawn or Akeria, if you make it to the merge, you still are only guaranteed at most, if you make it to the finale, 6 episodes. Versus a normal All-Star season, you would be guaranteed to be in all 12 episodes. I don't think you guys understand. Being on 12 episodes versus being on 6 episodes is a massive difference. It creates a much bigger connection with the fans when they get to watch you all the way from episode 1 to episode 12. And I think the queens in production are underestimating just how valuable that is. And even these early outs like Lucky Stars or Mystique, they maybe could have made it all the way to episode 4. Like, we don't know who would have been the first 3 outs, but a lot of these queens that are only guaranteed 3 episodes, I'm like, if this was a normal format, you could have made it to episode 4, episode 5, episode 6. You could have had more guaranteed episodes if it was just a traditional 1-by-1 elimination each week. So I don't think it's that much more beneficial. And then, like we said with Morphine, we didn't get to see Morphine lip sync at all during All Stars 11. And so it kind of feels like Morphine was underutilized and was there for nothing because we don't get to see anything we love Morphine for, and she never gets a chance to actually fight for herself. She doesn't get the points, and maybe it's because of her social game, which this is a social game. But at the end of the day, with no lip sync for your life, she doesn't get to fight for herself, and it just kind of falls flat. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a lot of the drama from the MVQ ceremonies, and it's not my least favorite All-Stars format by a mile. But I do think either lip sync for your legacy or just going back to the lip sync for your life format and maybe incorporating something like a Golden Beaver or Chippy T would actually greatly improve All Stars. I mean, the lip sync for your life is kind of just tried and true. So why must we choose between a stacked cast and an engaging season? Why can't we have both? Why can't we eat everything at the buffet? We're greedy, we're fans, and we want to see the show be its best because we've seen it be that way before. And I am so grateful that Drag Race is still on air, and All Stars 11 is not a bad season by any means, but I think we just need to go back to having a consistent format and having a consistent elimination order. I think that is going to bring All Stars back to a golden age where it's consistent, it's engaging, and it's stacked. That's what we want, and that's what we need. And now that we've covered that, we can cover episode 3 of All Stars 11. And this episode was not too bad. So starting off with the MVQ point ceremony, and Lucky gives her point to Morphine, and Morphine gives her point to Lucky, and that made sense. And I think then Morgan giving her point to Akeria, it also made sense just because I think they're really close, and I think Morgan was also like, this is a risk, but I think it could pay off in the end because one, it makes me look good, and that's always great. It's a gag for TV, that's always great. It builds suspense and storyline, which is always something to think about, and it maybe helps if Akeria isn't in the top this last week. It helps Akeria give her a point back because she's now indebted to Morgan. What I don't think Morgan was expecting, though, was Mystique to give her point to Akeria as well. And I think the reason why Mystique does this is I think Mystique kind of was like, Lucky's the only one here who is kind of I'm vibing with. She's not really vibing with anybody else there, if we're being honest. So I think she was really depending on Lucky's point. And when Lucky gave her point to Morphine, I think she was a little plucked and she was like, you know what? Akeria did help me. Let me just give my point to Akeria. And so when she comes back in the workroom the next day and she's pissed at Lucky, she's like, Lucky, you should have gave your point to Akeria. And I think Morphine, you should have gave it to Akeria too, because I'm all high and mighty and I gave my point to Akeria. And I think what she's really saying, but she's not saying, is, Lucky, I'm pissed at you because I was expecting you to give me your point. And I'm like, Mystique, you should have gave your point to Lucky because now you're far behind and you're not going to get anywhere by pestering Lucky into giving you her point. And then we get to the drama in the workroom, and I thought it was just like kind of uncomfortable because it was a little too real, where like Dawn and Morphine were not fucking with what Mystique was bringing their way. Mystique was like, oh, do you think that's really going to work? And I thought it was a little CUNT how Dawn was like, I think I'm going to be fine. Like, Dawn did not care. It's kind of like the same response that Dawn gave to Plain Jane of just like being unbothered. And it's just iconic. And then Mystique was like, oh, Dawn's cocky. I'm like, she's not cocky. She knows that she's going to do better than you. Like, I kind of love that. It's like, girl, I'm about to eat you up in the improv challenge because you can't do improv. I mean, I always love when they do kind of a live thing. This was kind of a QVC shopping network type episode, but it was monster themed. And I don't really feel like most of them did that well. I don't think most of them are that good at improv, if I'm being honest. It is what it is. I don't think anybody was that clever. I will say Morgan was leagues above everybody else on the cast. I mean, she showed why she is the main host in West Hollywood, why she runs the game there, because she was so professional. She was so confident in everything she said. She was prepared. And I thought everything she said was so funny when Akeria was like, is this, I don't remember what the shade. And she's like, it's white. It's white. And yeah, she looked stunning in the challenge. She looked stunning on the runway. We'll get to that. And I do think that Dawn was the second best, but her being the second best, it was so much lower than Morgan. And I don't think that Dawn did very good, if I'm being honest. Like, it wasn't bad, but it's just like everything she said was kind of like the most base level joke that you could think of. She just had this like cutesy like delivery of like, it wasn't laugh out loud to me. It was consistent. She did a good job about talking about her product. She had good puns in there. She had good jokes that were in line with her character. And so for that, I understand why she was in the top, especially because I don't think anybody else was as good as her. But it wasn't a great performance. And I think if literally anybody else who was better at comedy or improv was in this bracket, they would have been above Dawn. Everybody else, I guess we can talk about Lucky and Mystique because their rapport was so awkward. Like Mystique was kind of being mean and like it was just like uncomfortable, and Lucky was just like, and Lucky's just like, she is just so awkward. And I love that in a way. I love that like she didn't know what kosher was. First of all, I was like, she's supposed to be a vampire? I wasn't getting that. But yeah, I'm like, they were good in the challenge. And then Akeria and Morphine, they were like serviceable. I think they played well off of their scene partners, but I think they struggled with looking at the camera, and they struggled with completely selling their product super confidently, and they struggled with a super confident delivery. And I think Akeria struggled with a consistent character because by the end of it, she was supposed to be Egyptian, but by the end of it, she kind of just like fell into like this country accent almost. And Morphine was just kind of like awkward throughout. Like it felt kind of desperate. Like she was like picking up props, and like she picked up the ear like when the phone was on. Like I felt like she was trying to make moments, but I think a lot of these queens, what they don't understand with improv is you just have to be in the moment and be with your partner and just have fun. Like I feel like they get so into like, I'm acting, I gotta be myself, and I gotta be crazy, and I gotta make something happen. And it's like, if you're just like kikiing with the girl next to you, that's all improv needs to be. You want it to be real. You want it to be an actual interaction. And I feel like that's what a lot of these girls don't understand. It's like, you're not in the moment with your partner, and you're not being real. You know what I mean? And I feel like that kind of trips up a lot of people because they're like, what do you mean being real? I'm acting, I'm a character. It's like, yes, but to be in the moment in a scene, that's what acting is. Like you're there in it. And I feel like a lot of these girls, they just don't have experience with that, and so they don't get it. And so we get to the top two, and it's Morgan and Dawn, and like I said, it felt correct. And talking about this lip sync, this did not feel correct. I feel like Morgan ate Dawn up. Morgan is such a fierce performer. She's so confident, and she's so just with it. And again, I feel like Dawn is always kind of like grasping at straws with her lip syncs. They're never bad. They're always serviceable. That's what because a lot of people are saying like, oh, you're a Dawn hater when she lip syncs. And I'm like, it's not that. It's like, she's never bad, but it's never a consistent and confident performance. I always feel like she's unsure with her choices. And like, there would be times where I would see her looking over at Morgan. And overall, I just feel like she's there. She just needs to completely let go because Morgan was completely in it. And while I don't think Morgan's was like the best performance ever either, you know, I feel like she maybe could have emoted just like a little bit more for me. And I do feel like the one thing Dawn did have over Morgan was there was a couple moments where I was like, oh, I like how Dawn emoted that part of the song. And so maybe that's what put her over the edge. And I can sort of see that, but I think overall in general, I just think Morgan was more consistent in the lip sync. But so then we get to the final MVQ point ceremony. And Dawn wins the lip sync, and I believe it tied her with Morgan for 7 points, and Akeria had 6, something like that. Akeria then gives her point to Morgan, putting her up above, and then Morphine gives her point to Dawn, which Morphine was like so emotional, and I felt so bad because it's like, this just did not go her way at all. And then we had Lucky give her point to Morgan because the real tea is that Morgan is the only one who's actually been truly kind to Lucky without any strings attached, because I think Mystique was only kind to Lucky to get a point from her. And then finally we have Mystique who gives her point to Akeria. And then Morgan and Akeria are tied. And it comes down to RuPaul choosing who he wants to make it to the semifinals. And he says, based on your performances this episode and your performances all season, I choose Akeria. And it's not like I necessarily wanted Morgan to make it over Akeria, but it just is so strange to me that it's like, you, RuPaul, chose Morgan to win the first and the third episode, and then you're gonna sit here and be like, but Akeria, you should make it. Which maybe if it's like, but Akeria was just more consistent. Like maybe if Morgan was like truly like a booger in episode 2, I guess. But it's like, I just don't understand how you can reward her as much as you did, but then be like, no, but it should actually be Akeria who makes it to the semifinals. And it's just not as satisfying. And it's a good storyline at the very least that Morgan was able to help get Akeria to the semifinals and Akeria was able to tie it up. At the end of the day, it is kind of Morgan's fault that this happened, but Akeria then paid her back the favor that Morgan gave her, so it kind of balanced each other out. And so I don't think it should necessarily just be because, oh, well, Morgan shouldn't have gave her point to Akeria and then everything would have been fine. Either way, I'm just like, Morgan just slayed and then she doesn't get to reap the reward, which that's par for the course on Drag Race, but that's just kind of how I'm feeling right now. And so now we can move on to the runways. And here on Conspira C's, if we like the look, we enact it, which means it's going to the law. We love it. And if we don't like the look, we veto it, which means it's not going into law and it's not making it past Congress. And starting off with Akeria, she did this like Chiquita banana or whatever, or I don't, there's a specific reference and it's French because the whole runway theme was Parisian or something. This was good. I liked it. I guess I'm not as versed on designers, obviously. So I didn't necessarily see it stand out as French, but this was great. So I'm going to enact it. And moving on to Dawn, this is the first runway from Dawn that I don't really live for. First of all, she's doing like this gray mouse makeup, and I could just see her skin tone peeking out from her neck. And I'm like, girl, Dawn is such a great makeup artist. She knows better than to just bring it down to her neck. I mean, I know she knew she was going to wear like a turtleneck-esque thing, but you're on Drag Race. You should know at least bring it down to your chest so that there's no chance that your skin tone shows. And maybe it's a case of like she was just like sweating around her neck because the costume was hot and that kind of picked the makeup up. That's the one thing I can think of, but I just hate that detail when you're doing a different skin tone. And we're all guilty of it, but either way, I don't really like that. And then I just didn't feel like, I just felt it wasn't super clean. Like the mouse costume, like the tail was a little droopy. And then I felt like the fur pattern was like not very consistent and it wasn't very neat. And I didn't feel like the fur and then like the material of the dress looked great. And then the hat, none of the proportions were like really great for me either. And so overall, this is actually going to be a veto for me. And this is Dawn's first veto of the season. It is what it is. I didn't like it. And moving on to Lucky Starzzz, and I actually kind of liked Lucky's runway look for once. So that's amazing. I mean, she's doing this like art thing, and everything Lucky does is kind of rough around the edges if we're for real, but it kind of works for this because it's art and it's paint and it's splatter and it's whatever. And it was pretty neat for her. And I loved like all the different art. I think this is the one that for me really stood out as this is Parisian. This makes sense. And so overall, I'm going to have to enact this look from Lucky. Great job, Lucky. Moving on to Morgan McMichaels, and this look is so amazing. This Joan of Arc, and then with the cutlery, it was just really beautiful. I love the red hair, Morgan McMichaels. Is Joan of Arc, is she Scottish? I don't know. If she is, then that really is good. But yeah, I'm gonna enact this look. Great job, Morgan. Moving on to Morphine Love Dion, and she's wearing this like skull-inspired like Paris catacombs, and I wouldn't have necessarily got catacombs if she didn't say it, but obviously like it's still good regardless. I will say, she was like, there's 20,000 skulls on my dress right now. I'm like, there's not. There is, I can literally count them. There's maybe like 200 to 400. 20,000? Absolutely not. And then, who was it? It was Akeria. Akeria was like, there's 1,000 bananas on me right now. There was not 1,000 bananas there. I'm like, open the schools because y'all gotta get your math checked. But yeah, and the prosthetic that she did, she's like, I am the makeup artist of season 16. Overall, this was really great, and I'm gonna have to enact this look. And last, and certainly least, Mystique Summers Madison. Just Mystique Summers. Girl, you have been campaigning to get on Drag Race for like the past decade. You've been campaigning to get on All Stars. You only had to prepare 3 runway looks. And this is what you brought? This gown that, first of all, is sheer. It's basically a mini dress with some sheer fabric going down to the floor. Doesn't even look like it's touching the floor all the way. Maybe it was. I don't necessarily remember. But what about this gives Parisian? I can't even remember what she was saying. Like if it was like some designer or something that she was referencing. I was like, girl, this isn't giving Paris at all. And this is some bullshit. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mystique this whole season, first of all, the first episode, she was like, yeah, like I wasn't really trying because I just wanted to like, you know, kind of scope out the room, see what the other queens were going to do. I don't want to stand out too much yet. I'm like, yeah, sure, girl. You just flopped the challenge. And I always say I want to be positive, but positivity and honesty don't always go hand in hand. And this is one of those cases. It's just like, I just can't imagine getting the call to go on Drag Race. And it's like, that's what you brought? That's what you thought was going to wow them. And sometimes I have to give people the benefit of the doubt of like either maybe a runway didn't come in time or maybe some people are just delusional. Maybe she was like, oh, honey, I'm about to eat the girls up with this one. I will say on a positive note, I thought she looked stunning and so good in the challenge. And that's probably why she didn't want Lucky to get the cake on her dress. Because she was like, honey, this is the best thing I brought all season. You can't get cake on this. Overall, this is going to be a massive veto. I mean, you know what? We're going to filibuster this. Basically, it's terrible for me. She doesn't look bad, right? Right? Well, it's over. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I think the hype feature might be there. Maybe. If you like the video, please like it. Please hype it. Leave a comment if you agree with my takes or disagree with my takes, and tell me what you think the All-Stars format should be and what it should consistently be for the next couple years. And subscribe if you enjoy my content. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.